Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. We are going to double back. We did the song Race to the Sea a while back, maybe about a month ago, and they just released the Sabaton history for it. So that's what we're going to do today, the failure of the Schlieffen Plan. Before we get into it, in regards to the Schlieffen Plan, this is a incredibly hotly debated subject, right? Especially with the handling of the plan, quote unquote, by the uh, the younger von Moltke. You have this back and forth between a whole bunch of different sides of historians. Some who believe the plan was overhyped and not really much of a plan, to the other side that is essentially of the mindset that if the plan had been followed to a T, Germany wins the war, and literally all of the space in between. Like somebody is arguing every different point of the plan overall and what the plan even was. So, I'm not going to take a position on this. Every argument in this has been or is being argued by a historian that has far more knowledge and is far more credentialed in this area than I am. So I'm kind of just on the outside looking in and watching it all happen. But just so everybody knows, there is a ton of controversy surrounding what the plan actually was and how it was implemented. But with all that being said, let's get into it. Sabaton history, Race to the Sea.
Hello everyone, I'm Joachim from Sabaton,
And I'm Indy Nidell
and today we're talking about the race to the sea here on Sabaton History.
on Sabaton History.
I already said that.
I said it again. It deserves to be repeated.
As the North Duke falls and the battle horn calls, our lives would never be the same. We were looking down the barrel of our gun.
September 1914, the Western Front. The giant armies of the Entente and the German Reich are locked in a desperate struggle of survival, only 6 weeks after the Great War began. People don't realize how deadly the opening battles of the war, when it was a war of movement, actually were. On August 22nd, for example, the French had 27,000 men killed. Not total casualties, killed.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. The early parts of the war, nobody knows what the new reality of modern warfare is. And so all of the sides, well, no, not all of the sides. Some of the belligerents are somewhat incorporating their new ideas on warfare. And you have the Germans, for instance, who just fought the Franco-Prussian War not too far behind this. They also studied the American Civil War a lot. They're trying to implement the new technology into their new tactics and war doctrine, but still, this is a live fire version of it, right? And then you have other sides who are not. They are going into this with a totally old world view of warfare, marching in long columns, wearing, you know, I'm not sure. It may have been everybody that was wearing cloth caps when the war started. It may not have been. Don't quote me on that. But cloth caps, the French cavalry is going into war looking just like the French cavalry under Napoleon, which is wild. But yeah, you see this really old world mindset, and so when you fight a new modern war with machine guns and the massive artillery and all that, in this way of like, we're going to puncture the line and we're going to, bayonet charges and cavalry charges, and that's all nonsensical in World War I. But at the start of the war, That is very much the mindset that is being played out in real time.
For the entire rest of the war, that would remain the highest single-day death toll any nation took of the whole war. But the initial plans of both sides soon failed, and the beginning of a deadly stalemate set in, and both sides looked north, trying to find the last open gaps in the line. Whoever got there first, whoever put enough weight behind their punches to outflank the other side, might still gain quick victory. This was the race to the sea. We are about to engage in a battle on which the fate of our country depends, and it is important to remind all ranks that the moment has passed for looking to the rear. All our efforts must be directed to attacking and driving back the enemy. Troops that can advance no further must, at any price, hold on to the ground they have conquered and die on the spot rather than give way. Under the circumstances which face us, no act of weakness can be tolerated.
Joffre has some of the best quotes of the whole war. I feel like every other thing that dude says is in one way or another like an epic quote.
On September 4th, 1914, the German advance into France changed its axis. The First Army under Alexander von Kluck began wheeling around in a wide swing southwest as part of the Germans' Schlieffen Plan. Sensing an opportunity, the French Sixth Army made a move towards von Kluck's now exposed flank. The First Army turned to face the French advance, but in doing so, they created a gap of 50 kilometers between them and the German Second Army on their left. The French Fifth Army and the British Expeditionary Force threw themselves in for a counterattack into this gap.
Okay, sorry I'm pausing so much, but before it changes screens here, again, highly controversial on the plan here, but you had German soldiers who, remember, everybody is exhausted already at this point of the war. That's why the quote from Joffre says, you know, if you can't go any further, like, too bad, basically. The German soldiers see how close they are to Paris. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to go take Paris. So you can imagine the frustration and bewilderment that they have when they turn south and are literally going to march right by Paris. And of course, when they do that, when they turn, is when they expose their flank, when they open the gap. It's chaotic here. And you can see on the map, you can see what they're trying to do. I feel like it wasn't planned out very well, because this could have easily been fixed. But, you know, and so the deal here is, obviously, if your flank's exposed, if the enemy gets your flank, they can basically go roll up your whole line, right? So that is like Armageddon for an army if the other side takes your flank, which is what the whole race to the sea is trying to take the other side's flank back and forth. Also, by going and trying to protect their flank, the First Army, you have this massive gap open up for the BEF, and the French Fifth Army is there too, but the BEF does work here, even with just the few troops that they have. And so, if they get into that gap, the German line is over with. The First Army could be totally surrounded, and then they are in your rear. They can wreak havoc on your supply lines. They also have your flank right there. They have a solid breach of your flank. And so at this point, the Germans don't have a choice. Before this, they did. They didn't have to turn all the way south. They could have moved troops over there. You have the First Army and the Second Army there. Take a couple of divisions, move a couple of divisions from the east, be able to swing further out whenever you're going south, and you could totally get around the French Sixth Army. There's a bunch of ways they could have gone about this, but at this point, the Germans have no choice but to retreat. And the reason you can see here is because the French Sixth Army is threatening their flank, And if they protect their flank, the BEF is going to get right in that gap. Both of those are, like I said, Armageddon, the apocalypse for the German army.
What followed was one of the most decisive engagements of the Great War, perhaps the decisive one. German high command had to either continue the advance and risk being outflanked and enveloped, or stop and withdraw in the hopes of straightening the line. They chose the latter. On the 9th, for fear of losing the war to the Allied counterattack, they ordered the northern wing to halt and fall back. The Battle of the Marne, as it would be remembered, was a major strategic triumph that had prevented the Germans from driving to Paris. The German 1st and 2nd armies were forced back behind the river Aisne and dug in on the heights of Chemin-des-Dames.
And then to tell you how dumb everybody is in this war, especially when it first starts, the Germans will have dug in entrenched positions on the other side of this lake, and the French and British are going to go across and assault their positions. They're going to get mowed down. You can see the Germans are retreating here, and it's a huge victory for the British and French because the British and French were really in a bad spot up until the Battle of the Marne. But then you can't see the reality of modern war yet. The generals on the ground can't, because they're going to allow the Germans to dig in, and then they're going to go attack those entrenched positions across the river in entrenched, defensive positions. It's going to be brutal.
In hot pursuit, the French 6th and 5th armies hoped to capitalize on their victory, but the troops were exhausted and ammunition was low, and when they arrived at the Battle of the Aisne, they were facing a line of German trenches on the heights with artillery support. No chance to break through. On September 14th, the Allied armies as well dug in. Why dig in? Well, machine guns and modern artillery had changed the face of war. You simply could not survive being exposed. And a man in a hole in the ground, well, you can't shoot him, and you can only bomb him with direct hits. For all the horrors of trench warfare, it was still way less deadly than mobile warfare and way harder to overcome. Anyhow, Paris did not fall as envisioned, but the German attacks had succeeded enough that the German army now stood deep inside French and Belgian territory. Looking at the map, a static line of defenses emerged on the Western Front, from the forts of Verdun all the way to the south down to the Swiss border. But in the north, between the Channel ports and the River Aisne, there was still room to maneuver. If the Germans were fast enough and strong enough, they might still be able to turn the French flank. If not, they at least might still capture the important ports of Dunkirk, Zeebrugge, and Calais, and the vital railway between Hazebrouck and Roulers. The French, of course, realized what was about to happen, and they had not only saved themselves at the Marne, there was now a chance for them to turn the tables. If the French army concentrated enough force to the north, the whole German offensive might collapse like a house of cards. What then began was the race to the sea. Now, the name Race to the Sea is one of the most misleading that I know of in military history. No one was really interested.
Yep, I talked about this in the song for Sabaton, Race to the Sea. It's a complete misnomer. They are not racing to the sea. Neither one of them really want to get to the sea, because if you get to the sea, that means there is no longer a flank on the Western Front. Right? So that is not what they are trying to do. It's kind of a clever nickname, I guess, but it's a complete misnomer. That is not what either side wants at all.
Interested in reaching the North Sea. In fact, both sides needed to execute a swing well before that. Consequently, the commanders pressed all available reserves into the move northwards. The German 4th and 6th armies were pointed northwards to advance without regard for casualties, and the French organized Army Group North of the 2nd and 10th armies with the mantra, attack, attack, attack. Time was of the essence. On September 17th, German 6th Army began moving north, yet as they tried to circle around to the west, The French were already there to meet them. Intercepted radio traffic had alarmed French high command, who were committing 3 corps to match the German advance. What followed was the indecisive Battle of Fleury on September 20th, ending in the Germans creating the Saint-Michel salient. It was the first of a series of bloody engagements as the armies shuffled northwards. It really resembled a boxing match, right? With each side throwing wide hooks, hoping to exhaust their opponent with the next swing. Troops pushed forwards as fast as they could. Eventually, they clashed with the forward forces of their enemy, and a series of encounter battles were fought on the move. Then both sides dug in, holding out until reinforcements arrived, and then the whole cycle would repeat itself once more, to the north, ever to the north.
Now the war has come and the battle's begun. We are desperate to know the run. To the war drum we'll be marching till it's done. Lead the way, we will follow into the fray. We will hold the line, we will not be led astray.
Between September 25th and October 4th, the Battle of Picardy was fought. The French Sixth Army fought with the German First Army northwest of Compiègne. But by now, both sides really felt the loss of their assault divisions. The first month of the war had cost them hundreds of thousands of casualties, foremost among them the well-trained professionals. Now the fight was carried more and more by half-trained wartime volunteers. Young men swept away with their enthusiasm, were thrown into the jaws of artillery and machine guns. They could simply not execute the tactical maneuvers of fire and movement that had been drilled into the professionals, yet their commanders spent their lives all the same. The Battle of Albert was fought from the 25th to the 29th of September, as the German Sixth Army continued to move towards Amiens. Hopes were high of crossing the Somme fast enough to envelop the French left flank, but once more, the French were onto them. Their Second Army prevented a major turn just in time, stopping the Bavarians from achieving a breakthrough. By the end of September, both sides had really reached their physical limits. The weather turned bad. The supply situation was just horrendous. Men were marching 30 or 35 kilometers each day, often on empty stomachs, and they were still expected to fight. It was pure chaos, and the heavy cloud cover prevented any recon planes from taking off. The only way of scouting ahead was with cavalry, and smaller screening forces constantly clashed along the routes and rivers, trying to deny each other the room to maneuver. The Battle of La Bassée, beginning October 15th, was the final attempt for a decisive swing. As the German Sixth Army successfully pushed into Lille, they began to threaten the British Expeditionary Force at Ypres. If they were outflanked, they might lose their ports at the coast. In a preemptive strike, the British advanced into Armentières and prepared for a stand at the River Lys. Fighting fiercely in heavy fog, the British were able to defend the crossings and approaches from being exploited by German cavalry. The timely arrival of the Indian Corps helped them to hold out until the Germans exhausted themselves. They might have fielded the largest army in their history so far, yet they could not funnel in troops forever. By November, they had conceded. German high command put a stop to the major advances as the last gaps on the map were being closed. The constant attacks northwards had failed in forcing the decisive battle. Ypres was out of reach. Their forces were exhausted, ammunition and shells at their limit, casualties were enormous. Each attempt was quickly foiled by entrenched machine guns and artillery, and the Belgians had flooded the Yser Canal. The Germans had lost the race to the sea. The Entente and the Belgians had dashed the German hopes of continuing the Schlieffen Plan and executing a major envelopment of the French left wing.
And again, I know I said this in the video for the song Race to the Sea. The Belgians flooded their own territory, not all of it obviously, but they flooded their own land with salt water. Right? Like, salt was sown into the ground in ancient times when basically one empire hated another one, didn't want even the city to ever make a comeback, would sow salt in the ground so crops wouldn't grow. That is what the Belgians do voluntarily here to protect the flank. It is really, really kind of an astonishing move.
They had successfully established a continuous defensive line from the Belgian coast to the Swiss border, but they had also failed to capitalize on the momentum gained by the victory at the Marne and decisively overtake the Germans in the north. In this, they too had lost the race to the sea. As the days grew colder and the weather worsened, both sides continued to dig in. Ypres was still under threat and would be for the rest of the year, but the end of the race to the sea had ushered in a new phase of the Great War, trench warfare. Troops went from improvised fighting holes and improvised trenches to ever more sophisticated trench lines and mazes of barbed wire and machine guns. Cooler heads might have looked at the situation and realized the deadlock they were now in, but neither the Entente nor the Germans were making a move to call an end to the fighting. Instead,
And you could kind of understand from the Germans' perspective. Actually, I take that back. You can kind of understand it from both perspectives. If you're the Entente, you view this as, okay, even if it's a total stalemate here on the Western Front, we have the empires, the land, the manufacturing, the money, the manpower to win this war if it prolongs for a long time, right? The British implement the naval blockade pretty early on Germany, which doesn't have a very big impact on Germany initially, but the longer the war goes on, the more of an impact it'll have. From the German perspective, the whole thing with the Schlieffen Plan was you're going to go run through France and then you're going to move all your troops east and fight the Russians. Well, the Russians have troops in and around Eastern Prussian territory very quickly, way faster than what was anticipated. Again, the historians that argue that the war was Russia's fault and that they wanted it, that's a big part of their argument is why were there Russian troops so close to German territory right when the war started, when the Russian army takes literally a lifetime to mobilize. So from the German perspective, you're looking at it like, okay, we're in a stalemate on the west, but if we can have success in the east, then we could get all of those troops from the east and move them west, and that will break the stalemate. See, that's the thing, is everybody is rationalizing why they can win and what they can do to break the stalemate, even though the situation on the ground looks awful, right? On the Western Front, the situation on the ground is just there is nothing that could be done really on either side. It's a complete standstill. The trenches are going to get, like Indy said, way more complex, way more dug in. They're really kind of incredible. But both sides rationalize it and say, yeah, but if we use U-boats, we could change the strategic situation. Or if we use gas, or if we go attack Gallipoli, or, you know what I mean? Like, neither side really accepts what it is and kind of rationalizes ways that they could break this stalemate.
instead, they put their hopes into gathering some strength over the winter. The decisive battle would surely be fought in 1915.
So, before we get started,
Yep.
my shirt, man.
Yeah.
You like Melodica? This is not a Metallica shirt. I don't know if any of you guys noticed. This is a Melodica shirt. Do you know,
I didn't.
I didn't either. I thought it was Metallica the whole time.
It's not like that Metallica, the merch guy, is dyslexic or dyslexic and made a Melodica shirt. No. Me and my fiancée, Emily, we were watching 2.5 Men, with Charlie Sheen and stuff. And in season 1, there's an episode when Berta, the housekeeper, her daughter, who lived like a trailer park girl, she comes in one of the episodes and she's wearing a baseball rock concert shirt that says Melodica on it. And Emily looks at me and she goes, "You have to be able to get those online." So we went online, and you can. We ordered 2 matching Melodica shirts. She's got one too. It's a shame that she's not here right now. Otherwise, she could come on and wear her matching Melodica shirt. And so I don't know. It's pretty cool, right? They got the logo right, didn't they? So I don't remember where they ordered it from, but I'm sure you could Google it. Wait, is there?
I've seen that episode, but I didn't notice.
What would you didn't notice that?
No.
You thought it was a Metallica shirt.
I've seen all of the Two and a Half Men.
Yeah. But what would a Sabaton shirt like this say?
Oh, that's a good one.
Sabaton.
I've seen the
It'd have
one
to have the S,
where they added the extra B, so it becomes Sabaton.
Okay.
Sabaton, I've seen.
Sabaton. That's not as funny as Melodica.
No.
But it's something. I mean, it'd have to. Okay, in the comments, let us know how we could Melodica-ize Sabaton's products, and then we can make a lot of money. Do you see where I'm going with this, right?
We should actually find out which one is the best and make a T-shirt, one for each member of the band, for you and the person who comes up with it.
That's a great idea. You get a special merch.
Yeah.
What a great idea. Okay, let us know in the comments. And now, back to the race to the sea.
Yes.
Okay. Which, as I mentioned briefly in the episode, is actually an incredible misnomer, because the last thing anybody wanted to do was reach the sea.
Let's finish the other guy off before we reach the sea.
It should be the race to finish the other guy off before we reach the sea. Oh no, we've reached the sea. Shit, is this the sea? Maybe it should be called the Shit, is this the sea episode. Okay, change this episode to Shit, are we at the sea already? Damn.
Damn.
4 years of trench warfare. Now, whose idea was this song?
This was me, actually, which was really a tricky thing with being a songwriter is, having done this for 20 years now, or even more. But this is the 10th album. And to sit there and do something that is sort of very stereotypical Sabaton. This song is very Sabaton in its sound, in every element of it. And to do something really Sabaton, not working with someone else, after 10 albums, it's tricky to find that new idea.
Yeah,
Do not copy yourself too much. Of course, I mean, as a songwriter,
I think the new album is, if not their best one, certainly one of their best albums. I feel like every song on it is great. I mean, I've talked about this, on doing the actual songs on there, but I feel like they've really, really hit a stride specifically in songwriting. So that's weird that he feels like it's getting harder, because I feel like it's getting better.
we all have our own styles, and we are gonna borrow stuff from ourselves, or have our own way of twisting melodies together and stuff. Makes it instantly recognizable. But this one, I was really proud of it, actually, because I think both the story and the music is speaking in the same emotional language. And I mean, to be honest, what I found most inspiring about it is King Albert, the story around him and his family, And to be able, I might have copied myself or borrowed a few things, but it feels like something new. And I'm so fucking happy I could still write a song that still sounds like Sabaton, that isn't only a carbon copy of something, you've done before.
Okay, when we're recording this in February. I've heard the new album like twice. I listened through it with Per, right? But I don't know all the songs well. And I've heard Unkillable Soldier a bunch of times.
Same for me.
But so I can't actually venture opinions on the construction of the song. But from The Great War, for example, you guys did a good job of having still Sabaton, but something new. Like when we were talking about the Red Baron, you were talking, the drum beat on the Red Baron and stuff.
Oh, yeah, the shuffle.
Yeah, the shuffle on that, and that was cool. And I'm like, see, that's something different. And my favorite Sabaton song right now, since the live show at Novi Sad last year, it's probably going to change the next time I see you live, because it changes every time I see you live, was Attack of the Dead Men. And that's something that's that da-da-dum, osavit, then and again, basically, then 100 men,
It's
charge
like
again,
a
die again. I mean, that's fucking
broken
genius.
record on repeat.
But that's what I like.
Almost.
So I'm looking forward, is what I'm saying. Looking forward to going through this album, like going through the Great War album. So they're still coming up with new stuff.
I actually didn't realize. So, Indy just kind of like geeked out right there. I did not realize how big of a fan he was of their music. I always just thought they were friends. Like he knew their music, but he's a history guy, and so it kind of just worked out where they collaborated. But the way he just went through that, like, tells me that he is super into their music. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I like, if you think you're really coming up with something new, then probably
there are other songs that are more experimental and very much more different than this.
Yeah.
But this is more of a case where I'm really proud that I managed to something that's really super Sabaton, and I didn't nick it from that song or that song.
Okay.
I probably stole it from all the songs, I guess. But
after 100 songs.
Yes. No, but it's really a tricky thing to go into a new album, writing it, because instantly as a songwriter, you're sitting there and you are starting a new song, let's say with a piano or a guitar or whatever, and you have this demo, bad sounding pre-production piece of music, and you're comparing that to a best of.
Oh, sure.
Of 10 albums worth of material.
Yeah.
So it's a really unfair comparison in a way. So, but this was one of the songs that made me feel like, you know what, there's something in there. I can still do this shit,
Now, you mentioned Albert. I'm going to take us back to King Albert, okay? Belgium was neutral, of course, and the violation of Belgian neutrality was the reason Britain went to war. Although they kind of have to go to war anyway, because in a war between Germany, forget about Russia and everybody for the moment. In a war between Germany and France, one of them would win, and that one would be the dominant one on the European continent.
Yep, and again, I talked about this yesterday, I think. The arguments for why Britain was actually at fault for this war. And the whole argument is it's for geopolitical reasons. Germany is threatening Britain's geopolitical situation. If they take the reins of control of mainland Europe, they are certainly a threat to Britain's power. And that's why Britain goes into war. It doesn't really have anything to do with Belgian neutrality. Doesn't really have anything to do with their sort of handshake, sort of written agreement with the French. It's geopolitical. That's the argument. Like I said yesterday, none of these are my arguments or my ideas. So don't blame me for them, but also don't credit me for them either. These are historians' arguments on why certain countries are at fault for the start of the war.
And that would upset the balance of power for Britain. So they're going to go to war with someone or another, and it's great that, great. It's not great that it was the violation of Belgian neutrality, but Belgium, never joined the Allies. Belgium was neutral still till the end of the war. They never became an allied nation. I know that people, say, well, what's the difference? There is a difference. There's a huge difference. You being a Swede being a difference. If you're neutral, you might have people that guarantee your neutrality and stuff, but people don't realize you don't have allies. Like when we talked about the Winter War, right? Swedes, in a huge majority, wanted to join the Finns fighting the Soviet Union in the Winter War. But Sweden did not do that.
Nope.
Because if Sweden officially sent any soldiers, there were plenty of volunteers that went to the, if Sweden officially sent any soldiers to fight, then Sweden would be at war with the Soviet Union, and Sweden does not have any allies. And what do you think that would mean? So people don't quite realize that. France and Britain and stuff, they were under no guarantee to back Sweden if Sweden had declared war.
No.
So I know people, but I mean, I'm just people don't quite understand the perils of neutrality. It has its good sides and its bad sides. It's not just, we're not interested.
And I mean, in a sense, geography plays a whole part.
That's what I was about to say. The neutrality is totally dependent on where you are geographically, right? Because like Belgium, there really was no other choice for the Germans. They weren't going to go through the French forts into France. Like, they were going to go around. And so Belgium just happened to be there. It wasn't anything personal about the Belgians. They were just the country that was there. If Sweden and Finland were flip-flopped, the Soviet Union wouldn't have been marching into Finland. They would have been marching into Sweden. So geography plays a role on how you're affected by neutrality. But Indy is right, where neutrality is kind of a weird thing. And actually, it's argued about a lot on what exactly constitutes neutrality. Because certainly the Soviets probably didn't see the Swedes as totally neutral in the Winter War. But you don't have official allies, and that really is a big deal, because then if something happens, if it hits the fan, then you don't have any official allies. So people can come help you, but nobody is obligated to.
Lot into it as
Sure.
well. I mean, Belgium being in a place where they happen to be on the way to the destination.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
But they're on the way to the destination, so we're going to send 3.5 million soldiers in there on the way. You don't mind if we use the roads. You do? Okay, screw you. Fine, we're going to use that. But having said that, even as late as October 1918, the Kaiser and Hindenburg and Ludendorff were saying that any peace must allow for the continued German occupation of Belgium. That Belgium would not sign. This is a month before the actual armistice.
I had no idea.
A month before the armistice, when it was pretty obvious that the Ottomans were out, Bulgaria was out. There's only Austria and Germany, last man standing for the Central Powers.
And honestly, if Germany had any sense, they would have cut off the arm of Austria so that they could get their hand free of that chain.
They're saying, no. We'll consider an armistice, but we have to keep Belgium, which would keep the entire Channel coast pretty much on the other side. And the French, I'm sure, would be like, okay, we don't really care that much. The British were like, no, go back to the part about Belgium. And I think King Albert was pretty opposed to that
I would agree.
as well. So I suppose the people in the Congo wouldn't have cared one way or another because they didn't have a good history with the Belgian government, which is an episode for another time. Though.
That's the father.
I know, but it's still an episode. Okay, well, okay. If let's say I'm an oppressed colonial territory, right? And your father has murdered millions of my people. I'm not going to be inclined to like you.
True.
Okay?
I'll give you that one.
I think we all learned something today about look at the big picture. Because remember, history does not happen in a vacuum.
It's deep, man.
I know. I've said it on the World War II channel, Time Goes channel too, because whenever people write FDR, he knew about World War II. He knew about World War II. Okay, everybody knew about World War II, but he knew about the Japanese finds. I'm like, all of these things, history doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can't just say this thing happened, so that's bad. Why? Where? How did it happen? And where can you learn about a lot of these historical things?
Discovery Channel.
I was going to say Sabaton history, but yours is good too. Okay, well, that's it for us today from the Discovery Channel.
Yay!
Insert Discovery Channel logo here, discreetly.
Yeah, the
Smaller.
old logo when they were actually showing relevant material.
Yeah, good stuff. Not the new one. We're going to hell. Getting sued, going to hell. Cool. All right, ladies.
Should we get started about the History Channel?
Okay, so that was the Sabaton history for Race to the Sea. Sorry I cut Joachim off there. But yeah, go follow all their stuff. They're great. You know that. That's hilarious that he said the Discovery Channel there. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I'll put the link to the Discord down below. And I'll see you all next time.